Good morning, everybody. First off, I want to tell you guys before we leave here, somebody who actually works in doing all kinds of conferences and things told me that these are the best AV guys that we've ever seen anywhere. So thank you for that. We really encourage everybody to talk amongst yourselves to see who needs airport stuff to get to the airport. I know there's one young lady here. She sat beside, oh, she just went to her room. She has a flight at 1:30, so if somebody else has to go early to the airport, and I actually encourage that, not to say anything bad about cab drivers, but sometimes young women have a real challenge in cabs. So if we can get people to partner up and share a taxi back to the airport, that will be helpful. So talk to each other and network enough so that you guys all can get cabs, and I'm going to be sorry to see you all go. But all the same, I want you to arrive home safely.
Good morning, ladies. How are we all doing? Good. Last day. Okay, so we're going to start with a prayer from Diane Ludwig.
Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be here. All that energy that's coming from all the ladies here is just beautiful. Thank you. What a powerhouse we've had and seen all week. I thank Creator for all the love from one to another. And as we wind down the week, what an honor it's been, a feeling that we will never forget. Creator, God, bless us here today and everybody. Most of us Métis women will be going on our separate ways today. There, I think it's out. I don't smoke, I don't know why I cough sometimes. We must always remember to be kind, humble, accepting of one another, and never thinking otherwise of the people that you're walking with or the children that walk with you every day. We are all life givers of this world. Kisagusku, our Heavenly Mother, watch over our young ones. I admire how they sit and they sew and they bead. It's like the grandmothers of long time ago, and it's coming back full circle where our young ones are doing the same thing we did as young people. I love that. It's beautiful. And they so remind me of my cookums. I ask for blessings for our leader, Melanie. You do such a beautiful job, and you're so loving and kind. And Lisa, special prayers for these two ladies from all of us, and to all their staff. Great job, ladies. Bless us as we go on our way home today to fly on the big bird. I ask our grandfather Eagle to guide us, to protect us, and to take us to our home fires. Mercy.
And first up today, Dr. J is going to come up and talk to us about some health stuff. Yeah.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you to our elder for her opening blessings and her prayer. And most definitely, thank you to our leadership, to Melanie, Lisa, to Victoria, and to everyone here who makes our Women's Forum a success. And if you understand where I come from, success isn't just in numbers. Success is in spirit, it's in our heart, it's within our body, our relations, and it's in who we're becoming as Métis women and Métis leaders. So this morning, I was asked to just provide, set the stage, if you will. I think this is very timely. I was supposed to be on yesterday afternoon, so this will provide a bit of an opportunity for reflection. So the task becomes, I really have no PowerPoint or anything, but the question is really basic. but necessary and important as we journey forward. And the question is, what are our top 3 priority areas as Métis women? And many of you realize over the last few days, there are many, many key areas that have been gaps, that impact, that have future implications, if you will, for us as Métis women, as parents, grandparents, co-coms, and also has implications for our family, for our granddaughters, for our girls, and for those we heard yesterday, for our infants, the next generation, from that beautiful presentation from We Matters. So I'm just going to read a few notes. And so here we have, this will be our table work today, so we'll use the flip chart. It's just so bright up here. I agree with our elder, Rita. It's like, I need sunglasses is what I need. Okay, so table work, here we are. What are your priority areas for Métis women? The top 3 areas. We will be concise this morning. It will be a reflective sharing, if you will, but it'll help us journey and chart forward. We have all witnessed societal, systemic, interpersonal, lateral, and political injustices, imbalances, and inequalities, and inequities. And I just wanted to add with the inequities, you know, it's not enough to have equity per se. I'll give you an example. This is a really powerful example. Okay, so everyone here who knows, well, whether it's ourselves or someone in our family, you know what? With government and with our partnerships, it's not enough just to give everybody a bicycle. Who gets that statement? Raise your hand. It is not enough to give everyone a bicycle. So would you give a toddler a 2-wheel, you know, bicycle, right? You know, we got the training wheels. Would you give our elders who are wanting to get out of their assisted living, you know, care home just to go along the river onto the land, a mountain bike, right? You know, we adapt, and we need the wheels and the medicine wheels, I would add, right? You know, to respond respectfully, you know, to those needs. So I just wanted to add that on the bicycle analogy. Happy biking, by the way. So many of these issues and key salient areas we've discussed: poverty, parity, disparity, we know this. Also poor and poorer health status, chronic diseases, suicide, and I might add, homicide, incarceration rates, addiction, violence, child welfare, death, housing, trauma, climate change, also missing and murdered Indigenous and Métis women and children, forced sterilization. And I just wanted to add, and I said at my table, I am very verbal, or whatever the word is, because it's my take. I've lost it all, so I have nothing to lose, but only to gain. And who was asking me, a couple people were asking me about my name, right? You know, you're getting my card. Like, today is a great networking day because we're all going to fly on the Eagle. And, you know, I said, well, you know, my name, doesn't it sound beautiful? Jacqueline Marie Maurice. Isn't that a beautiful name? But it wasn't always that way, because when you're a foster child, you have as many names as you do homes. And I went through 14 foster homes. And, you know, similar to my Métis citizenship and identity, I had to cut through red tape. I had to fight and be forceful in a good way with government. And I had to pay for my rightful name back, Maurice. What's wrong with that picture? Yeah, through vital statistics, if you want to call it that. No wonder we're a lost generation and a forgotten generation. But the more important point I wanted to make when we had this really important afternoon of missing and murdered Indigenous and Métis women and children is, when you're a part of any system, be it the residential school system, the 60 scoop system, or, you know, child welfare system, I would say, and now a millennium scoop, you know what? Not shame on the child, shame on the system, because that is where the construct of, I mean, I get emotional, because I know my family was looking for me at age 10 and 11. And they couldn't find me. the construct of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children is no fault of their own. And it was the fault of the system because I had so many different last names. No one could find me. Like, you know, anyway. So I just wanted to put that out there also. I was MIA. You know, I was missing in action, but there is hope. Now I'm Métis in academia, MIA. For those that know me and tolerate me and love me in my first table there, you know, you know the way my mind works and my heart works, right? I love words, the power in words, right? Both written and our stories. So these are some of the issues. And now, so there we have a presentation, if you will, of some of our areas that are critical as we move forward. So the balance of that, as many of our presenters have spoke to, what about the forward planning? So, you know, our 3 priority areas. Forward planning is that solution-based and strength-based approach. So, for example, resistance, resiliency, reconciliation, respect, reciprocity, right? You know, even when we think of cultural safety, that's not only cultural safety for our own people, that's cultural safety for our healthcare providers, you know, for our non-Métis or non-Indigenous leaders. So cultural safety is that reciprocity, right? So cultural safety becomes paramount also, not only in words, but in action and in meaningful change. And I guess that's the only thing I would add, you know, really right now, is that, as Melanie so eloquently said yesterday afternoon, that these 3 areas, you know, it's here, you know, if you need to have some framework to your table talk, our kitchen talk, is it's who, it's what, it's how, and it's when. And hopefully that leads to the next step, which is not just piecemeal or Band-Aid approaches, like in terms of programming or initiatives, but really long-lasting systemic change. We need that change today and for our future leaders and generations to come. So if you don't mind, you can just, you know, this morning we have natural groups forming at each table. If you can grab yourself marker, if someone can take the lead, and also a flip chart paper. And again, the question is very simple. What are our 3 priority areas for Métis women that will create that long-sustaining systemic change? So I invite you to do that for the next 15 minutes, and we will have a bit of a reporting back for those voices we haven't heard yet, right? There's many beautiful people here. And I'll walk around if you have any questions. Go this way. So we'll take about 2 minutes to wrap up, and then perhaps we can begin with this beautiful table back here. So just another 2 minutes. Any final thoughts you want to add? And what I was doing when I went around to every table, I think it was really important to articulate that our president really wanted to know when. It's okay to have priority areas. It's okay to have an action plan. Emphasis is on the action, the implementation, and the investment in when. Okay, so we'll just take 2 minutes. So maybe we can begin now, and with each table we'll be as brief as we can be. Our wonderful next presenter, Jamie, needs to be somewhere at 11:30, so we'll just take a few minutes and report back our highlights, our 3 priority areas, and then I'll step back, and then Jamie really has a beautiful way to wrap up our morning. Okay, table 1. Or however you want to put it. Do we have someone that wants to report? Okay, thank you. Trying to keep it brief.
So our 3 priorities for Métis women are first all health and wellness, and second is housing, and third is aging out support for our people coming out of the system.
And what did you put for when?
Now, and it's happening now.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, yes. Okay. Our next table over here. Thank you.
Hello. So for ours, the first one, we have youth and elder empowerment and cultural education, so mentoring from elders. For the second point, we have rights and spaces to celebrate culture, such as smudging spaces, and recognizing the importance of putting culture into colonial spaces. For the third point, we have medical attention and education, eliminating barriers and access to these things. Traditional and holistic healing and medical care. Under these categories, we also have reclaiming a connection to land and holding governments accountable to reconciliation commitments, especially considering a Métis worldview and lens.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And when?
Now.
Okay, our next table. How about right here? Beyonce. Woo-hoo.
It was Jaja. Actually, my nickname in PA is Jaja, or Cupcake.
Okay.
Okay. So we did a lot of conversation, had a lot of conversation. So our first priority, we thought we need an advocate for women's rights in all communities or all regions, or so to include Métis Nation politics, including voices from youth and women. 2 was to have a Métis cultural center where it's like a hub for services where we would have health, addiction services, early learning, the youth, the elders, everybody in one building where it's a one-stop Métis shopping, and everything is intertwined, so everybody could collaborate with each other on each client or whatever, and so we think we need that. And the third one was allocation of funds to regions down from the top to the grassroots for women. So we have a whole bunch of other stuff, but just
And
leave it at
when?
now, and now.
Now. Okay. Oh, yes, yes. And one other question. With our one-stop shopping being Métis-centric, will that take us half the time? No. Okay.
So in terms of priorities, we made it to 2 because our first 2 ended up having sub-priorities. So mental health being truly the umbrella priority for the next priority in terms of safety. And so when we're talking about safety, we're talking about cultural safety and identity, safe spaces, safe practices in health services, in Ministry of Children and Family Services, in all of those government services. Harm reduction policies, knowing that culture is medicine, and so really what are we doing in terms of keeping our substance users safe, our street workers safe, safety as an individual, safety of housing, because if you're fighting to keep your roof over your head, then where's your mental well-being, and where's your space for all collecting your identity and sense of belonging. Safety in supportive services that are serving women and children. And so really the action behind that is looking for more advocates, navigators, and activists that will help that navigation of these systems that are multi-barriered. And then also making sure that women know their rights and starting with that education on the calls to action and also the education on United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the 47 articles, the 94 calls to action. I think it's important that we do community engagement sessions where we get to learn what those calls to action are, because they serve as a framework for us to assert our rights in this country. And then also leveraging our partners like our friendship centers where they have legal aid society in there with poverty lawyers, for example, who can help us navigate all those different legal situations that we find our bodies entangled in.
And when?
Yesterday.
Okay, we'll go to this beautiful table right where I'm pointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for being who you are. Just want to add that. It brought up a lot of good discussion at our table. So for number 1, we had nurturing our children and youth to become our future leaders, in particular, major focus on the 6 to 16 years, which is a huge gap right now. Safety and well-being of our grandmothers to keep our traditions alive and our communities connected. We also want to locate our lost children who are in the care system by gathering info from the parents while building relationships with agencies and others involved in the care on the child, as a Métis government as well. Did I get that right? I don't know if I said it right. Culturally supportive, emotionally, physically, mentally for our mothers, either staying at home or at work. So we're kind of doing a full circle, like I think like everybody else, and where I think we want to touch every aspect of each generation in every way possible throughout our care for everyone, our women. We also want for the when, definitely now and definitely yesterday, and maybe a little bit of how. Start right away by that youth employment and skills strategy. We were also told that there is capacity development funding that the LMFO is working on, and those are things as well that can be used to make this happen for us.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, over here, please.
Here, I can just go. Is that okay? Oh, are we in order?
Oh, are you together?
No.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, you see, I thought this was the executive steering committee, so I didn't want to disrupt the energy. So if you noticed, I pointed, so I took a lead from our Dakota House last night. I'm pointing over there, the energy is there. Suggestive.
Okay, so our first one, we had more Métis women elected into politics at every single level of government, so that we're able to compete in the political world and have our voices heard at that level, to for support for Métis women to get the education they would like to get, and also that our people will support Métis women being elected. The second one is kind of tied into that, is believing in ourselves and getting empowered to have that belief and empowerment that we deserve to be in every single space, because a lot of the times, for lack of a better word, like mediocre white dudes will just believe that they deserve to be in a space, but when you've had other education and like experiences, sometimes you think that you aren't qualified or you're not good enough. And I think sometimes it just takes a belief that you can do something, that there's no set list of qualifications for everything, that you can just go for it, and that you can have power in any single situation that you're in. The third is fostering the future generations, and part of that is getting back to the land and traditional practices, and to do that we have to protect our land, holding the government responsible and accountable for the things that they've done, which is really difficult when they're the ones funding most of what we're doing. So we have to make sure we keep doing that. And going off of that, that we have to develop ways to be economically self-sufficient in all aspects, so that we aren't completely dependent on the government for everything that we're doing. And in the interim, getting block funding from the government instead of project-based funding, so that a lot of our capacity isn't going towards writing grants for short-term projects, but actually securing long-term funding.
And when?
Now. And part of the thing about economic self-sufficiency was the idea of creating a sovereign wealth fund, so that we can invest for ourselves and then use the dividends to go into programming.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay. Chantal.
Okay, so some of the things that we talked about was having an inclusive government, having women's voices at the front of all government levels, having things like LMFO all across our country embedded in all government systems so that our voices are heard. We also need our own ministry. So we just wrote down that we deserve to have our rights to lead. We deserve to be able to leave our imprint and for our voices to be heard, and we want to see this happening within the next 2 years. The second thing we talked about was missing and murdered Indigenous women. It is an epidemic. Our women matter, and we deserve to have equal rights to safety as every other non-Indigenous woman.
True.
We want that to happen now. And then third was our health and well-being. As women, we are underrepresented in a healthcare system. A lot of things that are in our healthcare system are very man-based, and we're different. We're not little tiny men. We have very different organs, and
True.
and so we should have a feminine lens in our healthcare system. And a big conversation we talked about was how if a man were to have sex with 10 different women, he can have 10 different children. But if a woman has sex with 10 different men, she can only have one child. So why are we always putting the responsibility of birth control and body safety on a female when that should be and is a man's problem? So we want male birth control.
Wow.
And that, it's ongoing. That should be something that starts now and is always developing as our society develops.
Thank you so much. Okay, saving the best for last. There you go.
Okay, so the three big points we talked about. The first point we talked about is the importance of our stories, and we've seen that over the past few days and how we have to protect and remember and learn from the women from our past to move forward. Also education and creating leaders and access to education. So if our people want to go to school, having resources for that are easily accessible. And health. Access to healthcare and information and research. Equitable healthcare and oh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. And okay. Information about what our bodies need as Métis women and not just generalized healthcare. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. So can everyone, if you don't mind, someone from your table ensure our beautiful keeper of words gets all the flip chart notes and the 3 priority areas? That would be wonderful. So I think we're done this portion. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution in going forward. Oh, I missed it. Oh, I can't believe that. Sorry. Okay. Please, yeah. Action-packed morning. My apologies.
Okay, for our table, our 3 priorities were health, when now, of course. Just that a lot of people in rural areas need more access, of course. We would like to see dental brought in because of gingivitis and everything causes a lot of women infections and they don't even realize it and they could die from it. So even just a yearly checkup for that. Glasses, eyewear, of course, because our eyes are aging always. Just a checkup a year even. And we have to think of seniors because their coverage ends at the age of 65. So if they have medical issues, it becomes a very big burden on them because it's not free medical care and it gets very expensive for the seniors. Our second one, so that was number 1, health. Our second one was housing. So we were looking at affordable housing, family appropriate sizing for housing, and accessibility, getting houses for our disability seniors and people, because there's lots of disability-full young people now. Mortgage assistance other than HMSC, renovation initiatives, available loans for first-time and second-time buyers, because sometimes first-time buyers aren't the only ones wanting to buy a house, and rural areas as well as the urban. And our third one is family. And we're looking at culture, languages, history, and also of reminding people, because not everybody thinks of everything like all the time unless you're sitting down doing brainstorming, is that somebody has to be the knowledge taker. Somebody has to write the things down, keep the photos, do the history, do the math, you know, do like all aunties and uncles' families as well, because they're not doing the record keeping. So somebody in the family needs to keep those records and the pictures and keep it safe, and then pass it down if necessary for the next generation.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we've got every table now. Thank you for that. And thank you for entrusting me with this portion of the morning. I'd like to pass over the microphone to our president, and thank you again.
Dr. J is pretty amazing, don't you think? Thank you, Jackie. So she has donated to me 5 books of her story, Out of the Shadows. And actually, this is a book, it says volume 1, so I know there's more to come. It's some of the stories about the 60 Scoop survivors. And I know we haven't done a lot around that here this week that we've been here, but it is an important story, and it's an important part of our history, and it's one that isn't well understood. And I mean, I know Jacqueline talked about a little bit about this this week. So she said we could give these away to whoever we wanted to. And I think one of the gifts that we have is we have a history of passing down our stories and keeping our history and understanding where we walk, where our path has taken us. So I want, oh. Okay, I can't have one then. No, I'm just kidding. She's here to sign it too. So I want to see 5 young people get up and jig, I guess, but I want to give this to young people so that they have the stories and they can pass the stories down to the future generations. That's how I've decided to do this. So who's up for the challenge? Yes. Yes. Jamie jigs. And our sound guy knows the Red River.
Yeah, let's go. Come on.
Actually, Jamie is professional. Come on. Bring it on.
Okay, do your stretches.
I'm not. I'm her mentor. I'm her
I got to jig without bras.
No, we need one more.
Okay, so here's how it goes. So it's key love. So
It's just the double bounce effect.
Yeah, but Anne's not. Anne, we welcome you to jig, but I want the youth to take the books. Sorry.
Some wicked hot jams. Okay.
just like that.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. So do you want to come here and get a book? And the other thing I'll let you know is Dr. J, our sexologist over there, will autograph your book for you. Come here. Oh, you're welcome. Jamie? Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. So now that we made her dance, I'm going to ask Jamie to get up and do what she's going to do to teach you her fish scale art.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm out of breath. Okay. All right. So if you wanted to just take a few minutes, I have to leave, unfortunately, but if you have to go to the bathroom or whatever, get tea, I won't worry about anything. Sorry, I just need to catch my breath. I haven't danced since I had my baby. 19 months plus 9 months of pregnancy. Yeah, it's been a while. Okay, so my name is Jamie Morris, and I used to be Jamie Coble. So that's my new last name. How many people knew that I changed my last name? You did, yeah? Of course you did, yeah. Yes, there you go. So my husband's name is Stephen Morris, and he works, he's a CEO at the Métis Voyageur Development Fund. So that's how I decided to change my name. I'm still trying to figure out why, but I had no connection to my other name, even though a lot of other people did. So that's interesting. I'm going to go on to the next slide. I have a clicker. I forgot. We talked about this tech guy. Okay. So this is my so this is my really grainy version of Lac-Leamy. How many people have been to Lac-Leamy? Woo, so you know that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. So I know some of you here have also grown up there, and I've grown up with your relatives. I wanted to include this picture. Okay, so first of all, this presentation is normally 2 hours, but I have to be somewhere around, well, like noon. I have to set up another presentation. So how I do my fish scale teaching is I give a lot of the background, because people will learn from me, and then after they'll say, oh, can I teach this in my classroom? Oh, can I use punched plastic lid holes instead of fish scales? Can I go buy fish scales at the grocery store? So I'm going to do a really quick version of this to avoid any kind of just so that you know where I got it from and the history of it. So that's Lac-Leamy, town of about 3,000 people, last I heard, and then on Fridays during the farmers market, it gets like doubled or something. Still like that? So there's a very diverse community there with, one of the only white Russian colonies in Canada, French Plamondon. They have their signs in French, and there's an Italian community and a Ukrainian community and a Lebanese community. And of course, there's First Nation communities and Métis communities. So that's Lac-Leamy. This is my grandmother, who's German. She's from Nidalpine in Germany. She was so cute. Yeah, she was like 90 pounds when she passed away. She's always been little, and she had 10 kids. And my mom is the third oldest. But the first one, so my mom is the third oldest, but she was basically the oldest. She was responsible for all the other kids that came after her. So there's where Lac-Leamy is on the map, in case some of you from across the country need a little context. It looks like it's central, but it's, the earth has a curve, who knew? And it's actually pretty north. So that's me, and I put this so you didn't have to say "aw," but you can. But I put this in there because this is me when I was born, little baby, to a German family. Okay, so my mom, she had me, and after that, she met she met a white guy. He's also German, so this is their 2 kids. Now take a look at this picture and tell me that I'm not going to have a different experience than my brother and sister. And I really did, and I'm very different than them, but also when I say my brother and sister, this is who I'm talking about. But of course, I found out that I have many more siblings than I knew about. Okay, so here's my mom, my sister and I. This is at Fort McMurray. This is at Beaver Lake First Nation. We were helping with the Fort McMurray fires. So I work currently at the National Gallery of Canada as an educator. I have a company called Indigenous Walks. I'm sad about that. I'm sorry I couldn't take you. Anyway, so, and I have a dance group called Prairie Fire with my children. So when I see something from back home, I still have a connection. I still feel the connection because we're so culturally strong here in Ottawa, just me and my little family and whenever I can express it. And this is the house that I grew up in. It didn't look like that. It was more of a log cabin when I grew up, and it doesn't look very big, but it is big to a 12-year-old in my head. So my grandma raised me, the German grandma that I showed you. This is her farm, and I have so many memories. I'll give you a bad one and a funny one, okay? So up at the top there, you see where the roof is? That's where I was sleeping when I was a baby, that little baby picture that you saw. And my grandfather, so biological grandfather, my grandma's husband, came up the driveway with a shotgun and he wanted to kill my grandma. And mind you, she has 10 kids, and it was not really common for women to divorce at that time, but she did, and she got the whole frickin' farm. So good for her. Anyway, that's where I grew up, and my grandma was so cool. She was like skating in her, 60s, and I have good memories. I have funny memories of her. We had to watch out for what truck was coming up the driveway, because if it was this truck, then we had to go and put these plants in her room, and if it was a different truck, then we could just leave it. And I didn't know until later that my grandma grew a whole ton of weed. And it was like my responsibility to hide the plants if it was somebody she didn't know. And some of you guys may remember this from my grandma. She had a greenhouse for a long time. We had animals first and plants, and then she closed it down for a little while, got a little bit of a customer base that was not her usual, and she turned those greenhouses into weed greenhouses. And so she kept it from us, except for the few that were inside of her house, and that's the ones that we protected. That was my job. But I want to tell you that it's because of my grandmother that she got me into learning about, being Indigenous. I'm not going to say Métis, because the Métis community taught me to be Métis, and there's a part of it that has me just part of who I am. But often we went to sweats, and we went to big house ceremonies and things like that at Beaver Lake First Nation. So she's one of the only white women that was really that was really kind of accepted there. So I grew up in a lot of ceremony. For someone my age, that's rare. It's like now they're growing up in ceremony, or a couple generations ahead of me were, but there was a lost kind of time, and that's where my dad falls in. So I went back there just a little while ago, and that's what my grandma's farm looks like now. Yeah, so anybody who knows my grandma's farm, that's Craigan, got torn down. She moved from there right to where Sesame Street used to be, or they used to call Sesame Street, in Lac-Leamy, because everybody was sitting out on their steps when I was a kid, and then she moved right over to the graveyard next door. That's where she lives now. And so these are the 8 Métis settlements. So Paddle Prairie, Peavine, Gift Lake, East Prairie, Grand Prairie, Gatineau, and Elizabeth and Fishing Lake. And my dad lives at Buffalo Lake Métis settlement. Who the heck is my dad? Because he's the Métis factor in all this. Well, this is his mom. And she was a very strong, I don't know her. I like to say she was a very strong woman because I look at this picture and she looks strong. And then I think about all the stuff she had to go through, an abusive husband, so he was French from France. She had 7 of her own kids. She was murdered when she was 36. And this picture was taken in 1955, so that's her fishing boat. And look at her lovely clothes, that she's wearing there, and she just looks so badass. And she was a jigger and a fiddler, and I've heard like a lot of stories about her. And her shoes, yeah. So here's my dad. He's, well, they're all really the same, so just kidding. The middle one is my dad, Randy Mercier. And I'm not even joking, his brother on the left, his name's Andy. Andy Mercier, Randy Mercier, and Doyle. And they're all brothers. And so like I said, my grandma had 7 kids. And when she was murdered, they all got split up and they were all sent into foster homes. And except for Andy and Randy, I guess they liked the rhyme of their names, but they got to stay together for a little bit. They had some really bad homes. And he has all kinds of stories. And I'm giving you this backdrop because it is important to my practice. So he went to one of the homes that put him in the mission school for a little while. He was going to school there. That's where a lot of the kids went to the mission school. Who's from the mission here? Anybody else besides this table? So that's where he went, and it really was a residential school. So no matter, or day school or whatever you want to call it, but it had the same for many Métis, and even some French people, I will say, because I did interviews when I worked at the Métis National Council. I did interviews of people, and I also will say I asked for mental health support to come with me, and it wasn't granted. So I have a lot of guilt about that time of taking people's testimony and then not having any support after. But I was very adamant. But I was also a single mom without, needing a job. So you have to make some choices, but I have a lot of guilt about that. So my dad talks about some farms he went to, and I probably won't go into some of the details just because, triggering, we'll all probably get it and stuff, so I won't. But it was bad, yeah. Doyle didn't go, but Andy and Randy did. Now my dad is come from a fishing family, so he still does a lot of fishing. I never grew up with him. I saw him a couple of times growing up, and I'd just be walking with a friend and see him in a pickup truck and be like, oh, that's my dad. Aren't you gonna wave at him? I don't really know him. So it was a really strange thing to be in a small town knowing who your dad is, or going to a party and somebody says, isn't so-and-so your sister? A birthday party, when you're 10. And we were just kind of like, yeah, we acknowledge each other, that we're siblings, but we have nothing to do with one another. So I want to show you what it has taken for me to get into fish scale art. So on your table, you'll have a little glass of fish scales. You'll have a bunch of wax paper, and you'll also have some birch bark. So Ariane is here today, Ariane Muller from Manitoba, who is also Métis. She works with me at the National Gallery of Canada, and I asked her to come and help out today. So she's got the birch bark, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a little flower on birch bark, and she'll pass around the glue a little bit later. But first, this is what it takes to do the fish scale artwork, okay? So this is going all the way home. So I never grew up with my dad, but I was pretty persistent. And I just wanted to say that, Dr. Jackie, you were never forgotten. You were talking about this is a forgotten generation. I never forgot my dad. He never raised me, but I kept going back, but I had to set firm boundaries. I'm pregnant, they're all smoking in the house. Sorry, Dad, I just traveled all the way from Ottawa, but I gotta go now because you're smoking here. And I was very clear about why I had to leave, but that I would come back and visit under different circumstance. He doesn't smoke in his house anymore. He's been sober since my son has been born. Today, it's 20 months. It's been really hard because my dad has abused women. My dad has neglected me as a child and all of his children. But he's always been a fisherman. He's always had to struggle, and I never had I've never ever had any ill feelings towards my dad, and I didn't know why I didn't, because I thought in my head I should, So I just kept going back. I just really knew how important that connection was, and at first it was really selfish. It was like, I just want to go there, I want to be connected to the land, and cool that my dad's there, but I don't really want to have that much to do with him. But then he started to change. He made a real big effort, and he said to me, "When are you having that big opening at the gallery?" And I said, "Oh, November. This is, November 2019. This was a year before." And he calls me up a week, 5 days before, and he says, "When did you want me to come again?" And I'm like, "In 5 days. It's going to be a really expensive plane ticket." And he's like, "It's okay. I saved up." Yeah, and like, I'm not going to tell you how. Just kidding. But he saved up. He's doing the best he could, right? So he came, and his knowledge was like, he was valued when he came here, because people didn't know how to build a smoker. People didn't know how to build a frame. People didn't know how to build, to smoke hide. So people were all going to him, so his value was knowledgeable, and I think he saw that, and it really encouraged him to be a better person. And I can't speak to, his past or anything, but I can definitely speak to, the life he's trying to live. So I'm going to press play on this, and I want you to see that this is what it, takes. So I have to come from Ottawa. I'm not just like telling my dad to send scales in the mail, like this is actually spending money on a plane ticket, and we're driving from Edmonton and renting cars, and he doesn't have a super appropriate place to stay, so we have to get a hotel, and we still have to drive, even though we get to Buffalo Lake. This is Beaver Lake for some of you who were wondering about it. So he has some land here. When my son was having difficulty in school, I said, "Okay, let's go to the land." And I talked to his science teacher, and I said, "What can we do science-y from this?" And I talked to his biology teacher, "What can we do, biology, history, and math?" So we all found ways to fulfill his subjects in school for that whole week, and he could still be on the land and go fishing. So there's opportunities for creativity when it comes to Indigenous children in the public school system. And one of the great things about fish scale art is there's everything in there. There's science, there's literature, there is art, and I don't get into the math because I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing math when I do those scales. So here is my dad out in the setting a net, and I thought like, oh, we had to go real far to set nets, so this was really interesting. He brings in the, it doesn't go far, so I'm holding my baby, and here they're coming back in, and there's my uncle in the front, Andy, and my dad in the back, and my son. He's there. He was recording, so that was part of his, not biology, geography assignment to show our hunting and fishing rights, our land area. So I took this one just so like my son can feel really epic coming out of the boat. It's like super slow. And he got to ask, my dad what he noticed in terms of climate change, and what he saw in terms of the river levels, and what he saw in terms of the health of the scales of the fish. So you all have scales. I encourage you to take a bit, make sure you can split them all up between you. But you can do that now. You can grab your wax paper. You can grab your little birch bark there. So what you're going to do is build, we're not going to do it yet, but you're going to build your fish scale flower on that wax paper, and then you're going to let it dry, and then you can peel it off when it's dry and put it on the little piece of bark. And if you have a magnet, you can put it on there, make it a little necklace or something, and shape the bark yourself. Okay, so again, this is my dad, Andy, and this is just one map of our land area. So artists know the land too, artists know how to access our rights. And I don't know if you know of Kathy, what's her name there? The one that's a lawyer now, Kathy. Yeah, Kathy Hodges. One time I was sitting in on a presentation that she did, and she was talking about how, there's all these lawyers, most of them at first were non-Indigenous, going into communities and interviewing people. They missed something really important there, and then we're getting Métis men who are lawyers, and then they come in and they do a pretty good job, but they're missing something too. Along comes, Métis lawyer who's a woman, and she's saying, "You got all these amazing interviews here. Did anybody notice that our art is, on the back of this jacket, and the back of this jacket is a map?" So all the beadwork on the back of that jacket is a map of our land. That's going to be connected to our land rights. And when I was helping another court case, the Bellamere court case, they actually brought a fiddle into the courtroom because we tracked that fiddle all around Lac-Leamy and the Mission and up north and then into Isle La Crosse and La Loche and all that area. We're all connected that way. That's one of our big trails. And we legitimized or confirmed that trail because every community could pinpoint that fiddle. And the judge let the guy who's an elder and knew how to play the fiddle play it in the courtroom. So our musicians are knowledge holders and rights knowledge people too. So that's why I wanted to bring up this map here. This is in the fall, late fall, and my dad told me that when the fish are spawning, you don't touch them. So this is right before, and there's a lot of lessons in that, right? Women and pregnancy and taking care of our future generation and our bodies. And I suspect he's learning a lot too he's learning a lot himself, and me being there, kind of giving my interpretation, helps him think about things a little differently. So if you can see the ridges, you see the ridges? I don't know, some of you just need to like put your glasses on or just take them off. Just kidding. So you can see those ridges. That means that they're hitting a phase where they're about to spawn. So this is still okay. We can still fish here, but then they'll have a different. The ridges will be even different, and fishermen can tell. And that's when you don't go fishing. And in fact, that's when the fishing season stops for us and doesn't start up again until the ice freezes over. That's when it opens up again. It's a few months. Okay, so each fish scale is like, made of the same stuff our hair and our nails are made out of. That has a beta carotene in it. And if you look at a fish scale underneath a microscope, you can see that it grows like rings on a tree instead of a fingernail, up, up, up. It goes out, out, out. And so there's so much information that you can tell in terms of the health of the waters. And each scale is different, like individual, just like our fingerprint is. They're each and every finger scale is different. So this is my dad fishing. Look how fast. I just want you to know that my camera is not even as fast as he is. But we caught 30 fish that day, about 30 fish, and he scaled them all. So this is how I get the scales right here. This is at his house. Yeah, so he's really fast. And in fact, not only did he scale the fish in like 45 minutes or whatever it was, they were all cleaned. Yeah, they were all cleaned, gutted, ready to be frozen or shared with the community. This is what clean fish scales look like. I don't always get them this way, but I will give you some advice if you ever decide to do this. Please do wash your scales right away. It's not a pleasant smell after a week. And it's harder to wash. So how do I wash them? Put them in the sink. I fill it up with water and soap, just like regular soap. And I don't know when I started saying regular, because I used to say regular. But anyway, I have a little mesh, thing. You put the scales in there, and then you just like run the water over, and just like every fish scale needs to be rubbed and caressed and whatever to get everything off. So if you look at the scales that you have on the table, some of them will be super clean. They shouldn't smell, but they have in fact, they're so clean, I don't think any of them, they're not smelly at all. So the fish scale, some of them will have a black, I'm going to call it a tip. So if you think about and imagine a flower petal in your head, there's a pointy end, and then it goes round. And at that rounded end, there's a black, there's a black kind of substance on the scale that's harder to get off. Sometimes I leave it on there on purpose so that you can use that as a way to show the direction going out. Okay, so say you have 5 petals. You can start with the glue. Let's say you have 5 petals. You want to put all the like smaller end of the fish scale all to the center. Okay, and the black, if you have any, I don't think many of you do, or you'll have a small residue of black, and all the black goes out. Okay? So I only had 7 pairs of tweezers, so if you're like need a pair of tweezers, they're on where I was sitting over there, or Ariane can bring them around. I'm getting to that. It's a good, like how do people learn? So this is a dyed fish scale, so I like to start people off with the plain ones instead of the dyed ones. Just because I want you to see what they look like underneath the color. How do I dye them? I can get RIT dye. I can, get natural plants like dandelions, and even beets work really well. Bingo dabber, it's pretty all right too. That works. But they'll fade after a while if you use bingo dabber. So I learned how to do fish scale art from MJ Belcourt, and this was during a time when I was working at the MNC, and so I need a lot of balance, like a lot of balance. So when I would meet with people, I would say, okay, I'd try to find the women when I went home, and one of them was MJ Belcourt. She came to my hotel room with another lady, and we just put together a flower, and I didn't have much information, and I thought, I can't, I want to tell people about this, but I'm not ready yet, I got to find out more information. So I kept practicing, and the first thing I started with was just telling people that it exists. So Ariane right now is being a beautiful Vanna White, and she's walking around with a sampler piece that I use to teach my mentees. So I have 3 mentees of fish scale art right now, and we learn how to do the dyeing as well. My uncle Andy taught me how to do the dyeing. So he has a certificate from Portage College of the Native Arts program, and he taught me how to do some of the dyeing, and I just learned a bunch of dyeing. I was in Buffalo Lake on last week, and I got a lot of Suzanne, oh my God, I can't remember her last name. She taught me a lot about the dyeing too. She came to the workshop. So this is my dad teaching me about dyeing caribou hair that's in front of him, and we're at a powwow. So this is where a lot of the learning and teaching happens, right? I did apply for a Canada Council grant so that I could learn, and Geraldine Reed is also one of my fish scale art teachers. Now this is how you would actually construct it. This is one of my students who's using a pair of tweezers. So the glue is going around. You just need like less than a dime size, and then you dip the skinny part into the glue, and then you face all the skinny parts or smaller parts together. You have to do a little bit of imagination, okay? It's not going to be exactly like the petal. Some of you will see it, some of you will have trouble, but some of you will have easier time layering. So you just put the 5 down, and then you just glue on top, yeah. And if you know at the table, then just share, please. So this is my fish scale artwork. My fish scale artwork is it's unique compared to a lot of other people's because I use hair. I use porcupine hair. So that's what you're seeing here is porcupine hair. It's upside down and light pink. That's made with beads. And I use beadwork and a porcupine quill for the stem. And this is, it's kind of cut off because of just the way it is, but here's another piece. This one, I got to tell you, this one's upside down, upside down caribou hair. So you can see the little nodules at the end, just gives it a nice wispy look. So my husband, before he was my husband, commissioned this piece, and he must have done way too many visits than he needed to. And now it's in his office, and now we're married and have a baby. Yeah, so. Yeah. Yeah, yes. I know, I was like, he paid for it, but anyway, I'm like, no. So this was before, that was totally before we were dating, and I was doing a lot of fish scale art at the time. Here's when I went back home to, and it was really nice to see Lisa here because Lisa was one who lost a lot in the Fort McMurray fire. I don't know if she talks about it, but she lost a lot, like her husband too. They lost a business and stuff. So when we went home, we just sat together and beaded and did fish scale art because people were just in shock. So this was a nice way to get out of the chaos that people were in. Fish bones, these are vertebrae. We used fish bones as beads, so I'd like to see this come back. And one of the things I'd like to incorporate is the fish bones, the fish vertebrae with the scales and earrings. So please don't take my idea. Thanks. I'm just kidding. And here's some more dyed porcupine quills. These are the different colors here that are, this is just 5 different colors. I had this I did this one challenge for a group of mostly non-Indigenous people where I said, okay, there's 5, and I put a whole bunch of different color scales kind of as a sort of mnemonic device so that they can say, okay, the pink one represents this, and the blue one represents this. And so their task were to, you know, I'm just going to make it up because I can't remember what they were. Read a First Nations biography. Read up on a, you know, go to a Métis community. Like they were actionable things, right? One was about the TRC, one was about Inuit, and then one was about, I can't remember what the other one was. So this is my grandma. Her name is Irmgard. She's also from Germany. She's from Berlin. Her husband was a Nazi. And that was my step-grandfather. And so that was a very, again, different story compared to my siblings. So that was part of my upbringing. And she thought that I should, you know how to bead. So I remember her taking me to the bead store and saying, well, you look just like me when I was little. And, you know, when you're like 10, like you're not really thinking that it's probably impossible. But she... I wanted to do like the bonsai trees, the wire bonsai trees. And she's like, are you sure that's the kind of beading you want to do? And you could just take a guess what kind of beading she thought I should do, right? So she bought me a loom and some seed beads, and I taught myself how to loom. And she's the only one that has any of my loom stuff, and she passed away in 2018. And so she still had them, and she was like almost 90. She still had my stuff from when I was like 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so it was really cool. So this is some of the stuff. You can see the Cookham scarf there. By the way, if you're in town, H&M has like 4 different colors of giant shawl Cookham scarves. Yeah, so, and I think they're like $15 or something. Oh, now you're listening. Just kidding. H&M, right by the till, okay? So here's some other things that I was venturing into when I was like learning about my artistic side, right? So this was a pair of mitts. This is my first pair of mitts that I made. There's no fur on it right there, but whatever. Sure, yeah, go ahead, make it. No questions. Okay, so you'll have to wait. No, I'm just going to go through the presentation. If you feel comfortable doing it, go ahead. If not, then you'll have to wait for the instruction. How's that? So get to know the scales, get to know whatever's in front of you. Now this is a beadwork that I did for my daughter, Hunter. This is one of her mitts. So her name is Apsimusis unmito, and that means anybody could understand that? Apsimusis unmito. Unmito. Dancing fawn. Apsimusis. So moose is a moose. Apsimus, this is what I was taught, is a deer. Apsimusis is a fawn. And unmito is dancing. So it might not be right completely, but that's why Cree translation from Beaver Lake. And these are on her pair of mitts. So this is, I just saw this at the Royal Alberta Museum. And that little vest is when Blaze was a couple months old. We had so I made that vest for him there, but we had a welcoming ceremony for him because as somebody, this is not my territory. And one of my things is that I have to get to know whose territory am I on. Whose territory are you living on if you're not living in your own territory? What's your role? What's your responsibility? Because we can't expect, people who are immigrants to Canada or people who are settlers to respect us if we don't even respect our own role on Algonquin Algonquin territory. So we need to respect each other's spaces, yeah. So, look at who's this. So that's when Blaze was just little, yeah. Yeah. Did everybody get glue? Okay, so just go see Ariane if you need more glue. I did 5 pairs of vamps for the Walking with Our Sisters, and so I was really into beading a lot, and I did do some fish scale art. But you can see, I want to show you my beadwork because it influences my designs in fish scale art too. So this is Amanda Rayome. She's a Métis from Ontario, and this is her guitar strap that I made for her. So that's a close-up of the guitar strap. This is a belt that I made for my daughter, and this is my little dancing group when they were little, when JJ was the shortest, and now he's the tallest. Yeah, 2014. So this is when we were Jamie and the Jiglets, because they were Jiglets, and when they started to become offended by the name, we had a prompt name change, and that's how we got to Prairie Fire. And here is the Jiglets leading the Prime Minister out when we thought it was a good idea and a good time, in Canadian politics, and I think there's a lot of skepticism now. So that was them there, and this is also the Governor General and meeting her son, and Oliver Boulay in the background. And that says when you just give her as a jigger, you get like foot abs. Did you guys see that? It's funny. I didn't hear everybody laughing. Okay, so this is my artwork with my hands on drums, and I used to get a lot of criticism. Well, Métis don't use drums, blah blah blah. And you know what? I grew up with a lot of Cree background and tradition, and that's my experience. So it's not even like for me to judge anybody what their experience is. And I remember picking up a drum, my last $100, because I was a single mom at the time, and I said, can I really buy this drum? I only have $100, and we got groceries, we're okay. I think I could be okay till next payday. And I picked up the drum, and then I was at home, and I couldn't stop staring at it and putting it down. And my kids brought me my Sharpies, and then I just drew on a drum. And it was the first time I ever drew, which is also taboo. Women don't have drums. You don't really draw on your drums, where we're from too, right? But this was like so such a push for me. And this is, whether a Métis person wants to buy it or not, that's up to them. But this is something that was healing for me. And I ended up taking some drum lessons. I don't now, but it was an important part of my healing process. So I eventually moved from deer skin to human skin. And this is a tattoo that I did for a friend. It's colored now, but I just want to, so that's my drawing process. Now, that's what part of it looks like colored now. It's a whole sleeve. And then it went from skin to like the road. So this is at a crosswalk. This is one beautiful crosswalk, eh? Wouldn't you want to be crossing on that? It's supposed to be going up by Wabineau. Yeah, so I'm excited. And this is just a bit about my community, Indigenous walks here in Ottawa. So this is all Algonquin territory. I really wanted to take you on an Indigenous walking tour, Indigenous bus tour the other day, but we really just came from 3 weeks of a very difficult time, and it was just ending. Today's my second day out in 3 weeks. So here's a group from Greenland, and I forget where the other group was from. So this was where I talked about my experience as a Métis person in relation to, a Métis woman in relation to missing and murdered Indigenous women. And this article came out, it's available online now. this article came out in December, I think 2016. Yeah, 2016. And it was when a lot of the missing and murdered Indigenous women inquiry was starting. And they asked Ottawa Magazine asked if they could do an article on me. And I said yes, and I talked about my experience being a young woman in northern Alberta and being a waitress, and lots of, really traumatic experience there. And that was something that I wrote about. And my family was aware of it, and I talked to my kids before I published it, because I know that it will affect them too. But the one great thing is they teach so much in schools these days, about more personal stuff in some ways, and they were okay with it. So, but there's always consequences, and for my story, my consequence was my mother hasn't talked to me since this was published in 2016. So hi, Charmaine. So I haven't. She hasn't acknowledged my baby, and he's so cute, and she's really missing out. If you see her, you tell her how cute he is, and that she's missing out. And yeah, so she hasn't talked to me because I wrote a line in there, and it said that my family didn't come looking for me, and they really didn't. And my mom has a hard time with that. And so rather than deal with it, she's just like letting me go. So that's where that's at. You changed
lives when you shared that article.
Yeah. Yesterday, Chantel came up to me and she said, when you shared that article, and then I had so many people, young girls too, who were saying, this happened to me as well. And it was, yeah, so that's actually why I'm, okay in some ways, where I don't, it was a sacrifice to lose my mom, basically, and I didn't know that was going to happen. But I'm glad I wrote it, and I was so glad to see Chantel yesterday who told me that, because I think we should all write our stories. We should all write biographies, every single one of us. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is where my dad went to school at the mission. So that's where we're sitting in front of that. I'm sure lots of you have been there. So this is for my non-Indigenous audience, but yeah, I'll just leave it here. Now, this is the most important thing, as you can hopefully tell by my presentation and listening in the audience. I think laughter is the best thing. So when you're at your table, don't be afraid, just I know it's hard for some of us to laugh. It was really hard for me to laugh at first after my teenage years, and then getting into new motherhood and stuff. I think there was a long time where I didn't laugh because I was by myself here. I felt really not connected with other Métis in Ottawa. So that's why I continue to go home a lot. If I'm going to spread this art that comes from that area, then I have a responsibility to go back. And now you know where all those fish scales came from. That's a lot of hard work. Some of those fish were used to feed the community. Some of those fish were used to feed my dad and his family, and some of those fish were used to bond. Me and my dad bonding over fish. And I stopped eating meat a while ago, but I'll still eat fish with him. So for the fish scale art now, who's on the go already? Who's already yeah, good. So yeah, you got your 5. So once you have your 5 down, if you don't have your 5, dip the skinnier part in glue. And then match all of the skinny parts up together. And then once that is glued together, you just dip a strip of fish scale into the glue and layer it on top. So you may have another 4 or 5 right on top of the 5. But make sure again that there's a center. Everything goes back to the center. Okay? So I have 3 mentees. Sorry, I always forget my daughter just because she's assumed as my mentee. But the mentees that I have, they're really, one of them's Lynette LaFontaine, which I think sometimes she's from BC. And then the other one is Erin Consmo, who's from Alberta but lives in Sioux Lookout. That's my best friend growing up. Yeah, that was Merle, Pat Node. Oh, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, so we were supposed to do a fish scale workshop last week at Jaws, but I got sick, and so I didn't want to get anybody else sick, so we couldn't do it. I was really sad. But we went to Buffalo Lake. Otsitsi is Métis architects and designers in Edmonton. Aaron went. I couldn't go because, again, that's when I first got sick. But the connection with communities is super important. So, I never forget that, and I make sure that my kids are connected so they don't say, oh, my mom never kept me connected, you know, and like I'm in super teaching mode right now with them. My daughter's just turned 18, and my twins just turned 18. I know, yeah, and one's going to McMaster for bioethics. Yeah, thank you for her. Thank her, yeah. And the other one is just like knows herself so well and is like taking an extra year. And I know that's like that would not be easy for me to do because I'd feel like I failed or whatever. Not anymore, but Hunter just knows herself. And JJ is also taking an extra year. And he really likes being outside and identifying trees and tracks and stuff like that. So do you have any questions right now? I just gave a 2-hour presentation in a small amount of time, and I probably have to get going soon. But I'm up here for a bit, and I will say if you know the opportunity is here is that, and because it's such a group that I know very well, I want to say that fish scale art is the one thing that really helped me to get through working at the Métis National Council and beadwork, and. Yeah, there were some really abusive moments there, you know, at the MNC, and you guys have to do your own thing, because, yeah, you just have to do your own thing. Don't worry about them. Those guys there, yeah, they're abusive.
Hi, Jamie, over here at the mic.
Ah, yes.
I just wanted to thank you because we're a fishing community in Temiskaming, Ontario as well, and fishing is a very huge part of our traditional way of life, and I never even could possibly consider knowing that I can use the fish scales now for my art and the fish bones and all kinds of stuff, and I promise I won't take your ideas, I promise.
Yeah.
But just thank you.
Have a seat.
Yeah,
Just wait.
no, but
I'm not done.
Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah,
what you
you're
have
welcome.
with that, because I'm going to take that an extra step further in sustainable living, right? Like using the fish for everything that it's worth. We always usually used to throw out the scraps, but
This is what I want to explain, because we would never do that. Because as a Métis person, one of the things that we do that is the traditional, people are like, is this traditional? And I'm like, well, we've been doing it for probably a couple hundred years, not even that long, not even a couple hundred years, probably not even 100 years. People say, well, how is this traditional? Because the traditional part is that we don't waste the food, we don't waste anything. And we would never have thought to just throw the fish away. Well, we don't throw the fish, I meant. So you fillet the guts, the scales. Yeah. So one of the things that we use all those things for is fertilizer. We also use the guts for the feeding other small animals, right? And that's the ingenious of the Métis women at the time, because I was told by Violet, you know, from Beaver Lake, Violet, I think, Cardinal, and she said that, you know, I said, where does this come from? And she said, well, I don't know, like how they just sort of don't know, but they really know. And then she said lots of times the Grey Nuns, they came and did some embroidery. She said, but that doesn't mean that, she's like, we get the inspiration from around us. And one of our philosophies is never wasting the animal. Yeah, so here's how my mentees are learning how to do this. They didn't just say, I'm going to do this on my own and just go and do it, because there's a protocol to doing things in our communities. And they were, first of all, Lynette made me this beautiful brooch, and she came to me and she said, you know, I'd like to learn this and blah, blah, blah. And she came like in a good way. She came with presence and real genuine reasons why she wants to do the fish scale stuff. And Erin too. Erin came to me, you know, and said, this is what I can offer. Can you teach me? And they both applied for Canada Council grants, so that means I can take them to my community to go fishing. I just came back last week from ice fishing, like I was saying, but that there's a protocol there, you know, and that I had to follow that protocol too, and ask, can I make something other than a flower? You know, can I, like, there's so many questions I had, and I want to, I'm kind of starting a new thing, like not a new thing, but there's this protocol that I understand in my head that I need to respectfully follow. Yeah, and you can see on my Instagram, what is my Instagram? I think I just went real like far. I just went Mrs. Jamie Morse because it was, my husband's like, don't you think that's extra? Mrs. Jamie, you know, that's a lot of misses and, you know, but everything else was taken, okay? So Mrs. Jamie _Jamie Morse. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, okay. So I do post on fish scale stuff there. So I started off by just talking about this and making an awareness. I didn't start teaching until I had several people teach me, and I asked them if it was okay. Can I teach now? And my mentees are in the same process. They sort of say, last one was supposed to be, I was supposed to teach Erin to teach, but I got really sick. And so she learned a little bit, and that's just probably what she was ready to learn then. Right? So I take it as it comes. And I guess I'm protective of fish scales because I've seen so much of our beautiful art be appropriated. Even our own people sometimes, you know, and they don't really, or we're appropriating other people's types of beadwork and stuff. And if you don't get that beadwork in a good way, like Lisa Shepherd started doing Mohawk, but she did a knowledge transfer thing there. She went to the community. The Mohawk ladies taught her. And that's how we do it, you know? So that's another part of what I want to share, but I better get going. So any other questions? Thanks for telling me you're a Fisher person. Anybody else is a Fisher person? You can, yeah. Is this something that we can share with the women at our well, what did you get from what I just said? There you go, observing protocols. Yeah. You just ask somebody. I have like 2 and my daughter right now, and that's like my limit because I need to treat them well and make sure. Oh yeah, MJ's there. Geraldine Reed is a fish scale artist. There's Dene people who are fish scale artists. And I don't know, like I know in my head what I want to do as a mentee and how I want to teach, but I don't know how those people will, you know, so I'm very aware, because I work also at a national gallery, I'm aware of like appropriation and rates of payment, and yes, you have a question. When do we put it onto our little piece of bark? Basically, you can, when you feel that it's ready to be peeled off of the wax paper, like it's strong, then you can peel it off, and then you could glue it onto your bark. Yeah, and if you want, you can paint it with clear nail polish after, put some sparkles on it, make some glitter. You can put it a little like a brooch. You can make it a brooch. You could make it a necklace. You could make another one if there's extra and make earrings. Yeah, so Ariane's going to pick up some of the glue. So if you need more glue, you need more glue? She needs more glue. Grab your glue. We'll leave one here, Ariane, and then somebody can just take it home and take care of the glue for me. And I want to, you guys should like really, like I was talking to Chantel, she totally grew up in a really hard place. And I know probably some of you have too, because I grew up there. But Lac-Leamy had the highest rate of violence per capita in all of the whole country. And the RCMP stats, when I grew up, it was Lac-Leamy. And now we're third. Lac-Leamy is third in the whole country, and now it's where? Prince Albert? Yeah. So when I grew up, we had the highest rate of violence in any RCMP detachment, and we also had the highest rate of teen pregnancy. So you can see what kind of community that is. Sorry? Yeah, if you wanna take some scales home, just go ahead and whatever's on the table, distribute it amongst yourself. Those are the scales you can use for whatever you want to practice dying or whatever. But we're gonna dump them back in the. No, I don't really want to take any with me because I have so many, and I really want you guys to get some bonding in with your fish scales there. And you'll notice it's kind of meditative, eh? Yeah, the dyeing process is even more meditative because you've got to separate every single fish scale. Because if you don't, it could take weeks to dry. Yeah. And if you don't separate the fish scales, the two colors will go on top of each other, and you'll get a lighter color where they were layered. So that's why you got to separate them. So I want to thank you so much. Oh my God, I'm super thankful for Melanie, who was really patient this week, and Lisa, who heard me crying on the phone because I was maxed out. And for Ariane also does she does these little mini sash weaving, and she lives here in Ottawa. She's right there. Yeah, so if that's an idea. She can weave these little sashes if you ever want to do something at another place. Okay. Any other questions? No? Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Sorry if I made you scared to ask questions.
No, it's not really a question. I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this here, and the way that you spoke about everything. It helps to make sense of everything else, and in each of our personal circumstances, it helps to make I can see this now. I understand now. This isn't as scary anymore, even though it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it helps to make sense, and specifically also that you said the guilt that you carry with you for a particular thing. It's very powerful to hear that, because I myself carry guilt in my. So how do I do that? How do I? Okay, we're doing that. We're gonna. It's gonna be. We have to do this work, and how do we learn to do this work, and how do we learn how to do this work, and then how do we do this, and then how do we stay doing it?
It's very structured.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when we hear that, so I just want to say how powerful and potent it is to hear you talk about that and share that, and thank you so much for bringing it here, and the scales and the picture of going down the road, and thank you so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there. Thank you very much for saying that. Mm-hmm. Good. Hey, so I'm better now, so don't feel like you can't reach out to me, because I wasn't taking a lot of messages for a while, except for maybe Melanie's and Lisa's. Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, you have to dip the fish scales in glue. Yeah, so you don't put the fish scales in the glue, and then let it sit there, because sometimes people will put a dab of glue and then they put their fish scales on top of that dab of glue. That's not what you want to do. Every fish scale has to be dipped. And then you just put that down, and then that's it. And then you can do another layer if you want. Some people want a curvier fish scale, so you just have to you can lick it a little bit and roll it back and forth in your hands. You can make a cone. You can make it flat by bending it the opposite way. So just it's like your fingernail. Yeah, there's a lot of other technical things, and those are good questions. But those are good questions. Yeah, it takes a long time to learn it all. There you go. Awesome. Yeah, you can maybe paint it with nail polish too after.
So I really want to thank Jamie, and she doesn't need to feel bad about what happened the other night. We all have times in our life that things just don't work out the way we want them to. So, and believe me, actually, there are blessings in everything that happens. So that day, we were so exhausted that the evening to ourselves was probably the best possible thing ever. So I want to ask Rita to come and do a closing prayer. But I first off want to tell all of you guys that you've all been amazing. I've been so blessed all week just sharing this week with you guys. I wish I could do this every month, actually. I know the amount of work that's involved, but it's just been so empowering to have all of you here and sharing the world that we have to make change in. So the messages are here. We have the graphic artists who've done such amazing work in being able to help tell our story. We have Crystal, the word master. Thank you, Crystal, for everything you did this week, too. Thank you very much. By the way, Crystal actually has been with us on our journey from even post-inquiry on the MMIWG. She has been a trooper and a half in making sure all of the things that we've worked on and all the things that we've done are recorded and have voice. So I really do appreciate her and Raincoast Ventures for the work that they do. I really appreciate my staff and the things that they're doing. They're all missing out of this room right now. But that's because they're busy working and getting ready so that we can pack up and go home. I want to also take this time to apologize to you guys. Apologizing for this crazy venue. The venue, our meeting room, has been powerful. But I do know that there have been experiences, especially from some of our young women, of extreme racism in this casino. And you know, it's one thing for us to be talking about triggering issues. It's quite another thing to see that people in this casino are so racist against Indigenous people. I know I will never have anything at this venue again. Just because of it, but I have dealt with the hotel to try to have some intercessions with their staff to change the attitude, but we then heard last night that there was more of it. So, and it isn't just the women that are here. There are other Indigenous people coming to this casino that are just treated horribly. So the racism is extreme, and I do apologize. Had we known that, we would have never agreed to have our meeting here, our workshops and forums here, and we won't do it again. The hotel itself has been amazing, but this venue of the casino has been horrific. So I just want to put that out there. I apologize. Had I known that, we would have never been in this room. So I don't want to end on a bad note, though, because we have powerful stuff that has come out of this week. That stuff is all going to come out in documents and in reports and things that you'll be able to find on our websites. We actually have it live streamed, and we will take the live streams which have been put that were on YouTube, and those live streams will actually be a permanent thing that you'll be able to access off of our website as well, as soon as we get that up there and done. And actually, I have videos if you need to see what happened last night. Don't ever play the Ring of Fire for that girl. That's all I can say. Anyway, it was a lot of fun, you guys. I mean, I know we had an exhausting time, and I know some of you weren't able to make it, but it really was a lot of fun. So I want to invite Rita up to close us in a good way.
I'll do it from here.
turn my back on anyone, but before I say my prayer, I want you to know, you and your staff, how you have touched us. I want you to know that I knew how hard you worked, but I had no idea how far we have come since you joined in this. Oh, it's unbelievable what we heard. What we heard here this week was unbelievable. I'm sure it touched everyone as much as it touched us. So to you and Lisa and your staff and all the other women, I say thank you. God bless. There's a special place in heaven for you guys, you ladies. Till we meet again, may a rainbow always touch your shoulder. May the sun shine through your window pane. May all who enter your home be blessed. And let us remember, we will always be known by the happy tracks our moccasins make in many snows yet to come. And you know, tomorrow or next week, no matter where you go, you're going to run into a homeless person, many homeless people. I went to a convention on homelessness in Toronto, the biggest convention I ever attended, and they said 82% of homeless people are mentally ill. They didn't get up one morning and say, I want to sleep outside, I want to dig through garbage, I want to be exposed to the elements, the criticism of people. If you see a homeless person, shake their hand, give them a smile, maybe bring them into Tim Hortons for a coffee, because while they're there, they're getting warm, or a bowl of soup. But put your hand out. Let them know that they're valued people. God said we're all his children, so we're all brothers and sisters. I came out of Value Village, and there was an elderly Inuk there, and he was just putting his sign behind a garbage can asking for money, and I went and I shook his hand and I gave him some money. And I said, you're my brother. And he said, we're not brother and sister. And I said, oh, yes, we are, because I'm Indigenous. He says, you look like a white woman to me. But I said, I'm Métis. Well, then he loved me. If you see somebody in the forces, like, look at Kareen's daughter. She was in Afghanistan, and she went out on the land with these soldiers that were fighting, and she was a medic. So if you see her, maybe she's smiling and everything, but God knows what's inside of her. The same as the policemen, the firefighters, the EMTs. It doesn't take anything to say, thank you for serving. Let them know. Maybe they're having a bad day. Let them know, and it'll pep them up. But love one another, but love yourselves. Amen. Thank you.
Aye, aye.
Aye, aye. Miigwech, Kuyana Mig. I love you, do you don't know what this has meant.
I am so glad.
We're all having trouble. And I feel so alone. I just went to the hospital the week before, and I was so and I come to you and everybody says, well, you don't know what you did for us. Okay. God bless you. Hey? Well, you've got enough under.
Oh, believe me, I have room for you always.
You have no idea.
Always. I think about you all of the time. I do.